My name is Alexandria Carter, 32 years old, and I never expected to find myself sitting on a dusty box in the storage room of my family business. After 10 years away building my career, I thought coming home would be different. Instead, my brother James smirked as he gestured to the cramped space behind the meeting room. "Oh, sit in the storage room, we need space for important clients," he said dismissively. Little did he know that the CEO of Evercrest Capital, the client everyone was anxiously awaiting, was already there. Me. If you want to know how this all unfolded, let me know where you are watching from, hit that like button, and subscribe to see how I turn the tables on my family, who never believed in me. Growing up in Mapleton, a small town where everyone knew your business, my family had always been respected. Carter Investments was the pride of our community. A financial services firm my father, Harold, had built from nothing but determination and a small loan from his uncle. Our brick building on Main Street, with the imposing Carter family crest above the entrance, was a symbol of success and stability. Dad started with just himself and a part-time secretary, eventually growing to employ 30 people from our community. My mother, Eleanor, played the perfect supportive wife, hosting dinner parties for clients and maintaining our family image while raising 3 children. Though she had a degree in economics herself, she never used it professionally. "A woman supports her husband from behind the scenes," she would tell me whenever I asked why she never worked at the firm. I noticed how she would sometimes gaze longingly at the building when we drove past, but she never complained. James, my older brother, by 4 years, was groomed to take over the family business from the moment he was born. Despite his mediocre grades and superficial understanding of investment strategies, Dad poured all his knowledge and connections into preparing James. Summer internships, private meetings with clients, expensive business schools, all opportunities were handed to him on a silver platter. James has the Carter instinct. Dad would boast at family gatherings, even when James had just made a poor investment recommendation that Dad had to fix behind the scenes. I would watch from the doorway of Dad's home office as he corrected James's mistakes late into the night, then praised him publicly the next day. My younger sister Abigail, just 2 years behind me, followed the traditional path expected of Carter women. She studied communications, worked briefly as the firm's receptionist after college, then married the son of one of Dad's golf buddies. Now she organized the firm's charity events and raised her 2 children perfectly content in the role that had been designed for her. Then there was me, the middle child who never quite fit the mold. From the age of 12, I was fascinated by the stock market. I would spend hours reading financial newspapers, analyzing trends, and creating mock investment portfolios that consistently outperformed my father's conservative choices. By 16, I had turned my babysitting money into a small but impressive personal investment fund. Alexandria put away those financial reports. "That is not appropriate dinner conversation. For a young lady," my mother would scold when I tried to discuss a new investment opportunity. My father would chuckle and pat my head condescendingly. "Leave the complicated stuff to your brother, sweetheart. Why not help your mother with the client gift baskets?" The summer before my senior year, I created a comprehensive analysis of Carter Investments' portfolio, identifying several underperforming assets and opportunities for growth. I spent weeks perfecting my presentation, hoping Dad would finally see my potential. "Women do not lead investment firms," he stated flatly, after glancing at my carefully prepared documents for all of 30 seconds. "Clients want to see a man at the head of the table. That is just how this business works." James smirked from the doorway. "Nice try, Lex. Maybe you should stick to planning the office Christmas party." That night, I made the decision that would change the trajectory of my life. I applied to finance programs across the country, seeking scholarships and student loans. When my acceptance letter to Wharton arrived with a partial scholarship, I knew I could not turn it down. The night I told my family I was leaving Mapleton to pursue my own path in finance was the first time I saw genuine anger in my father's eyes. "You are abandoning your family for some foolish dream," he shouted. "No daughter of mine is going to disgrace us by failing in a man's world." My mother cried silently while James looked smugly satisfied. Only Abigail squeezed my hand under the table in quiet support. "If you walk out that door, Alexandria, do not expect our help when you come crawling back," my father warned, as I packed my car. I left the next morning before dawn. The following 10 years were a blur of 18-hour workdays, instant ramen in tiny apartments, and climbing the corporate ladder one exhausting rung at a time. I interned at prestigious firms, saved every penny, built networks of my own, and eventually gathered enough investors to start my own company, Evercrest Capital. I deliberately chose a name unconnected to myself, wanting success based on results, not family connections. Within 5 years, Evercrest had grown from my tiny home office to occupying 3 floors in a Manhattan skyscraper. Our client list included Fortune 500 companies, and our investment returns consistently outperformed market averages. Through it all, I maintained minimal contact with my family. Christmas cards, occasional phone calls with my mother and sister, nothing more. They knew I worked in finance, but I never shared details of my success. Pride kept me from reaching out, and they never asked. It was the death of my mentor, Margaret Wilson, that finally pulled me back to Mapleton. She had been the only person to believe in me when I started Evercrest, investing her retirement savings as my first major client. At her funeral, she had left me a letter asking me to reconcile with my family. "Life is too short for pride, Alexandria," she had written. "Show them who you've become, not out of spite, but so they can truly know their daughter." So, when I learned that Carter Investments was seeking partnership with a larger firm to expand their services, I saw the perfect opportunity. Evercrest Capital was in the market to acquire regional investment firms with established client bases. I directed my team to arrange a meeting, but instructed them to keep my position as founder and CEO confidential until the actual meeting. I returned to Mapleton with hope in my heart. Perhaps now, with my success evident, my family would finally see my worth. Perhaps now they would welcome me back with open arms and respect. I could not have been more wrong. The town of Mapleton had changed in the decades since I left. The old movie theater had been converted into an artisanal coffee shop, 3 new chain restaurants had replaced local diners, and the Carter Investments building had expanded to include the former hardware store next door. The family crest was now illuminated with spotlights visible from blocks away, a beacon of prosperity, or at least the appearance of it. I checked into the new boutique hotel downtown, rather than asking to stay at the family home. After settling in, I called my mother to announce my arrival. "Alexandria, what a lovely surprise," she exclaimed, though I had emailed her about my visit the week before. "We must have dinner tonight. Your father will be so pleased." I doubted that very much, but agreed to meet them at Riverside Grill, the upscale restaurant where we had once celebrated special occasions. My mother and sister greeted me with hugs that felt genuine, if somewhat reserved. Mom looked older than her 58 years, new lines etched around her eyes and mouth. Abigail looked exactly as I expected, polished and put together in a conservative dress, her husband Benjamin hovering protectively at her side. "You look so urban," my mother commented, taking in my tailored pantsuit and sleek haircut. I could hear the unspoken comparison to Abigail's more traditional femininity. My father arrived late, making an entrance as he always had. Harold Carter still commanded attention when he entered a room, though his hair had gone completely silver, and his once trim waistline had expanded. He gave me a stiff, formal hug. "So the prodigal daughter returns," he said, his smile not reaching his eyes. "What brings you back to our little town after all this time?" Before I could answer, James arrived with his wife Susan, whom I had only met once at their wedding years ago. My brother had inherited our father's height, but not his presence. He had the soft look of someone who had never faced true hardship, his expensive watch and designer suit speaking of superficial success. Well, if it is not little Lex," he said, using the childhood nickname I had always hated. "Still playing with stocks and bonds in the big city." "Something like that," I replied neutrally, unwilling to reveal my hand too soon. I hear Carter Investments is looking to expand. A flash of something surprise or suspicion crossed James's face before his practiced smile returned. Business is booming. We are exploring strategic partnerships to take things to the next level. The dinner conversation remained superficial, focused on Abigail's children, local gossip, and carefully edited versions of our lives since I left. No one asked detailed questions about my career, and I volunteered little. The undercurrent of tension was palpable, old wounds, still tender beneath the veneer of family reunion. As dessert was served, I made my move. I understand you have an important meeting tomorrow with potential investors. I would love to attend, see the family business in action again. An uncomfortable silence fell over the table. James recovered first. Oh, that is just boring business stuff, Lex. You would not find it interesting. Actually, I would. Finance is my field, after all. I kept my tone light, but firm. My father cleared his throat. It is a private meeting, Alexandria. Confidential matters will be discussed. I can sign an NDA if necessary, I countered. I work with sensitive financial information every day. Another uncomfortable silence. Finally, my mother intervened. I think it would be lovely for Alexandria to see how the business has grown. She is family, after all. My father and James exchanged looks, a silent conversation passing between them. Finally, Dad nodded curtly. Very well. The meeting begins at 10. Do not be late. That night, in my hotel room, I prepared meticulously for the meeting, reviewing Carter Investments' public financial records and preparing notes. What I found concerned me. Despite the expanded building and apparent prosperity, their growth had stagnated over the past 3 years. Their investment strategies were outdated, and they had lost several major clients to more progressive firms. They needed this partnership more than they were letting on. The next morning, I arrived at the office at 9:45, dressed in my most impressive business attire, a power suit that had closed million-dollar deals in New York. The receptionist, a young woman named Tara, looked startled when I introduced myself. Oh, Miss Carter, I thought. We were told the meeting had been moved to 11. My jaw tightened. So that was how it would be. I must have misunderstood. I will wait. For the next hour, I sat in the reception area, watching staff hurry past without making eye contact. Several times I spotted James through the glass walls of the conference room, directing preparations for the meeting. He saw me waiting but never came out to explain the time change. At 10:30, my sister Abigail hurried in, looking flustered. Alex, I thought you were not coming. Dad said you canceled. Did he now? I kept my voice neutral. Just a misunderstanding, I am sure. Abigail looked uncomfortable. I am sorry, things have been tense here lately. The business is not doing as well as they pretend. Before she could elaborate, James's assistant, Kimberly, approached. I remembered her vaguely from high school, a few years behind me. She gave me an apologetic look. Miss Carter, Mr. Carter, asked me to let you know the meeting will begin shortly. The Evercrest representatives are expected to arrive soon. If she only knew. My executive assistant, Rachel, was in a car around the corner with my team waiting for my signal. We had planned to arrive separately, to preserve the element of surprise. Thank you, Kimberly, and please call me Alexandria. She nodded and lowered her voice. Everyone is really nervous about this meeting. Evercrest Capital is a major player, and we need this deal to go through. Is the situation that serious? I asked, though I already knew the answer from my research. Kimberly glanced around to ensure no one was listening. Between us, yes. The firm has been losing clients to more modern investment companies. Your brother has made some questionable decisions. Just then, James emerged from the conference room, frowning when he saw me chatting with his assistant, Kimberly. The presentation materials need to be collated. Now. She scurried away as James approached me with a forced smile. Alexandria, I see you made it after all. The meeting is about to begin. I stood gathering my portfolio. Wonderful. I am looking forward to it. His smile tightened. Just remember, this is a very important meeting. These Evercrest people could save or sink us, so please do not say anything unless directly addressed. The patronizing tone made my blood boil, but I maintained my professional composure. I understand the importance of the situation, James. As we walked toward the conference room, I could see staff running last-minute preparations, straightening chairs and arranging refreshments. The atmosphere was tense with anticipation. They had no idea that their most important client was already in the building, watching their every move. The conference room had been transformed for the occasion. Fresh flowers adorned the center of the polished table leather portfolios, with the Carter Investments logo were placed at each seat, and a professional-looking presentation was queued up on the large screen. Name cards marked the places for my father James, the company's legal counsel, Gerald Miller, and several spaces labeled Evercrest Capital. No place had been set for me. "You look different," my father commented, as he entered the room eyeing my attire with a mixture of surprise and disapproval. My charcoal gray Armani suit, with its subtle pinstripes and crisp white blouse, was a far cry from the floral dresses my mother and sister favored. "Professional attire for a professional meeting," I replied evenly. James snorted. "What would you know about high-level meetings, Lex? Playing with your little stock portfolio is hardly the same as running a family business." I bit my tongue, reminding myself that the payoff would be worth the temporary indignity. "I have attended my share of important meetings." "Well, this one actually matters," James retorted. "Evercrest Capital manages billions in assets. Their acquisition division is considering us for partnership, which could double our client base." If only he knew that I had personally built Evercrest's acquisition division from scratch 3 years ago. My father straightened his tie nervously. "Alexandria, perhaps it would be better if you observed from the sidelines. These negotiations require experience and finesse." "Yes," James added quickly. "We cannot afford any distractions." As more staff filed in and took their places, I remained standing conspicuously without a seat at the table. Gerald Miller, the company's longtime legal counsel, gave me a curt nod, but offered no greeting. He had always been my father's man through and through. When clients from local businesses began arriving for the presentation portion of the meeting, the space grew even more crowded. James made a show of introducing each guest to my father, deliberately ignoring my presence. "We seem to be running out of room," James said loudly, as the last few people entered. His eyes landed on me with barely concealed satisfaction. "Alexandria, perhaps you could sit in the storage area. We need these seats for important clients." He gestured to a door at the back of the conference room that I knew led to a small storage space where office supplies and marketing materials were kept. My cheeks burned with humiliation as several people turned to look at me. "Of course," I said, my voice steady despite my anger. "Anything to help the family business." The storage room was exactly as demeaning as James had intended. Cardboard boxes of brochures were stacked against one wall, a broken chair leaned in the corner, and the overhead light flickered erratically. A small window offered the only connection to the main conference room, allowing me to see and hear the proceedings, but effectively removing me from participation. I had to move several heavy boxes to create a makeshift seat for myself. Dust covered my expensive suit, and the room smelled of toner cartridges and old paper. Through the window, I could see James speaking animatedly to a group of local business owners, occasionally glancing in my direction with smug satisfaction. "Can you believe she just showed up expecting to be involved?" I overheard him say to Gerald Miller. 10 years without so much as a phone call, and suddenly she wants to play businesswoman. "Women rarely understand the complexities of high finance," Gerald agreed, loud enough for me to hear through the thin wall. "Best to keep her out of the way." I closed my eyes and took a deep breath, fighting the urge to storm out. Walking away now would only reinforce their dismissive attitude. I had built a billion-dollar company from nothing, weathered financial crises that had destroyed lesser firms, and earned the respect of Wall Street's most ruthless players. I could endure a few hours of my family's condescension. The memory of similar treatment throughout my childhood strengthened my resolve. I remembered presenting my first stock market analysis at age 14, only to have my father pat me on the head and tell me to leave the numbers to the men in the family. I remembered James taking credit for my investment strategy that won him first place in a college business competition. I remembered every dismissive comment, every opportunity denied, every achievement minimized. Through the window, I watched as my father called the meeting to order. He spoke about Carter Investments' legacy in the community, their traditional values, and their vision for growth. James then took over presenting outdated market analyses and overly optimistic projections that made me wince. Any competent investor would see through such transparent inflation of their performance metrics. Our partnership with Evercrest Capital would allow us to expand into new markets while maintaining the Carter family values that have made us successful for 3 generations, James concluded, with practiced sincerity. I checked my watch. Rachel and my team would be arriving in exactly 30 minutes. Until then, I would continue to observe and gather information about just how badly my family's business needed saving. As the presentation continued, I noticed increasing anxiety among the staff. Kimberly kept checking her phone and whispering urgently to other employees. My father repeatedly glanced at his watch, and James's confident facade began to show cracks as the scheduled arrival time for the Evercrest representatives approached. Through it all, I sat on my box in the storage room, invisible yet seeing everything. The proverbial fly on the wall, gathering ammunition for the moment when I would finally step into the light and reveal my true identity. The dust made me sneeze, occasionally drawing irritated glances from James, as if my bodily functions were deliberately disruptive to his important meeting. As the minutes ticked by, I found a certain dark satisfaction in their growing nervousness. They had no idea that their fate rested in the hands of the very woman they had literally relegated to a closet. Poetic justice was about to be served, and I intended to savor every moment of it. The tension in the conference room grew palpable as 11:30 came and went, with no sign of the Evercrest Capital representatives. My father kept checking his Rolex with increasing frequency, while James paced at the front of the room, his earlier confidence evaporating with each passing minute. "Should we call them again, Gerald Miller?" suggested, his normally composed demeanor showing signs of stress. "We do not want to appear desperate," James snapped, though desperation was exactly what I could read on his face. Through my storage room window, I observed the local clients growing restless. Several checked their phones or whispered among themselves. This meeting had clearly been billed as an opportunity to witness Carter Investments securing a prestigious partnership, a chance to reassure the community that the family business remained strong. Instead, it was becoming an embarrassment. "Perhaps they are stuck in traffic," my father offered weakly. "Hartford is nearly 2 hours away." I suppressed a smile. Evercrest's acquisition team was actually parked just around the corner awaiting my signal. The delay was entirely strategic. James barked orders at Kimberly to call the Evercrest offices again, his tone unnecessarily harsh. She scurried away, looking close to tears. His treatment of staff revealed much about how the business was being run in my absence, explaining the high turnover rate I had noted in my research. "James," my father hissed, "control yourself. We still have clients present." My brother straightened his tie and attempted to recover his professional demeanor. "While we wait for our guests, perhaps we could review some of our recent investment successes." What followed was a painfully transparent attempt to distract from the absent Evercrest team. James highlighted several investments that had yielded moderate returns, carefully avoiding mention of the significant losses I knew they had suffered in the tech sector, due to poor timing and risk assessment. From my dusty corner, I could not help but notice several fundamental flaws in their business strategy. Their asset allocation was overly conservative for younger clients, yet paradoxically too aggressive for retirees. Their fee structure was outdated, charging flat percentages rather than the tiered approach that had become industry standard. Most concerning was their almost complete lack of environmental, social, and governance considerations in their investment decisions, a critical factor for attracting younger clients. During a brief pause when James stepped out to confer with Kimberly, I leaned through the storage room doorway and addressed Gerald Miller. Have you considered adjusting your fee structure to be more competitive? Most firms your size have moved to performance-based models. Gerald's eyebrows shot up in surprise, either at my knowledge or my audacity in speaking up. That is not how we do things at Carter Investments. Traditional does not always mean optimal, I replied. The market has evolved. My father overheard and frowned deeply. Alexandria, please refrain from offering uninformed opinions. We have managed this business successfully for 30 years. I was about to respond when I caught fragments of an intense whispered conversation between two junior associates seated near me. The quarterly numbers are worse than they are letting on, one murmured. Jenkins County School District pulled their pension fund last month. That was 15% of our managed assets, the other replied. If this Evercrest deal falls through. So the situation was even more dire than my research had indicated. Carter Investments was not just seeking growth, they were fighting for survival. My father's conservative approach had failed to adapt to changing market conditions, and James's attempts to modernize had apparently been haphazard and poorly executed. This explained the palpable desperation in the room, the frantic glances at watches, the strained smiles. Everything hinged on this partnership. Without Evercrest's capital infusion and client network, Carter Investments might not survive another year. A strange mix of emotions washed over me. Vindication certainly that my early assessments of the company's weaknesses had proven correct. But also an unexpected pang of sadness for my father's legacy, built over decades of hard work, now teetering on the brink of collapse. James returned to the conference room, his face tight with stress. They should be here any minute, he announced with forced cheerfulness. Traffic on the interstate is apparently terrible today. Another 20 minutes crawled by. The local clients began making excuses to leave, sensing that the promised introduction to Evercrest Capital would not materialize. Each departure visibly wounded my father's pride, as he tried valiantly to convince them to stay just a little longer. Perhaps we should reschedule, Gerald suggested quietly to my father. This is becoming uncomfortable. My father shook his head firmly. Absolutely not. This partnership is essential. We wait as long as necessary. Just then, my phone vibrated with a message from Rachel. In position. Ready when you are. The moment of truth was approaching. I felt a flutter of nerves despite my careful planning. After 10 years of building my success in secret, I was about to reveal myself as the very lifeline my family was desperately awaiting. Would they be proud? Resentful? Would this bridge the gap between us, or widen it irreparably? I slipped out of the storage room, needing a moment to compose myself before the grand revelation. In the hallway, I encountered Kimberly, who was returning from another unsuccessful attempt to contact Evercrest. Is everything all right? She asked, noting my serious expression. It will be, I assured her. By the way, you deserve better treatment than what I have seen today. She looked surprised but grateful for the acknowledgement. It has been especially tense lately. The business is struggling more than they admit. This Evercrest deal. It is not just another partnership. It is survival. I nodded. Things are about to change, Kimberly. For better or worse. My phone vibrated again, with another message from Rachel Carr pulling up now. Entering building, in 2 minutes. It was time. I took a deep breath and texted back a single word, proceed. I returned to the conference room, just as James was making a last desperate attempt to salvage the meeting. The remaining clients looked bored and unconvinced by his increasingly grandiose promises about the future of Carter Investments. Once our partnership with Evercrest is finalized, we will be positioned to offer unprecedented returns. He claimed, his voice slightly too loud, his gestures too expansive. Their resources combined with our local expertise will create synergies that benefit all our clients. I quietly resumed my place in the storage room, wanting to observe the final moments of the old Carter Investments, before I transformed it forever. Through the window, I watched my father massaging his temples, the picture of defeated dignity. For all his faults, he had built something meaningful from nothing, something I had once desperately wanted to be part of. In that moment, my motivation shifted subtly. This was no longer solely about proving myself or enjoying a moment of triumphant revenge. It was also about saving my family's legacy, albeit on my own terms. My phone lit up with Rachel's final message. Walking in now. I straightened my suit jacket, brushed the dust from my shoulders, and prepared to step out of the shadows and into my rightful place. The moment I had imagined for 10 years was finally here. The atmosphere in the conference room shifted perceptibly as Kimberly burst through the door, her face flushed with excitement. All heads turned toward her conversation, halting mid-sentence. "Sir," she announced breathlessly, to James, "they are here. Evercrest Capital's CEO just arrived in the lobby." A collective sigh of relief swept through the room. My father straightened his tie, while James quickly ran a hand through his hair, composing himself. The remaining clients sat up attentively, suddenly reinvested in the meeting they had been ready to abandon moments before. "Show them in immediately," James instructed, his voice cracking slightly with nervous tension, "and bring the special reserve coffee." This was my cue. I stepped out from the storage room, brushing the last of the dust from my Armani suit. No one noticed me at first, all eyes fixed expectantly on the main entrance. I positioned myself at the back of the room, standing tall, despite the ache in my back from sitting on boxes for over an hour. The door opened, and everyone leaned forward in anticipation. But instead of a delegation of executives only, my executive assistant Rachel entered, immaculately dressed in a navy blue suit, tablet in hand. Confusion rippled through the room. "Where are the rest of them?" James whispered loudly to Kimberly. Rachel surveyed the room with professional detachment until her eyes found mine. She gave me the slightest nod, our prearranged signal. "Sir, Evercrest Capital's CEO is here," Kimberly repeated, gesturing toward the door with growing confusion. A moment of bewildered silence fell over the room as everyone looked from Rachel to the empty doorway and back again. James began to fidget nervously. "I am Evercrest Capital's CEO," I announced clearly, my voice cutting through the confusion like a knife. Every head in the room swiveled toward me. The expressions ranged from confusion to disbelief to dawning horror as the implications sank in. "Alexandria," my father said weakly, his face draining of color. James recovered first, his embarrassment quickly morphing into defensive anger. "Do not be ridiculous. Stop playing games, Alexandria. This is serious business." Rachel stepped forward, her professional demeanor unwavering. "Allow me to introduce Alexandria Carter, founder and Chief Executive Officer of Evercrest Capital, managing over $8 billion in assets across 17 countries." She handed me my executive portfolio, embossed with the Evercrest logo, then opened her tablet and displayed our company's official biography page with my photo and credentials clearly visible. "This is absurd," James sputtered, his face turning an alarming shade of red. "She is just trying to embarrass us. Evercrest is a major financial institution." Founded in 2014 by Alexandria Carter, Rachel continued smoothly after she graduated summa cum laude from Wharton and completed executive training at Goldman Sachs. Under her leadership, Evercrest has achieved average annual returns of 22%, outperforming market indices by approximately 8% annually. The room had gone completely silent. My father remained frozen in his chair, his expression unreadable. The remaining clients were watching the unfolding drama with undisguised fascination. "I built Evercrest from nothing," I said, moving to the center of the room. "No family connections, no inherited clients, no safety net. Just determination and a better understanding of market forces than those who dismissed my abilities." I locked eyes with my father as memories flooded back. The night before I left for college, pleading with him to consider my investment strategies. His dismissive wave as he told me that no one would trust their money to a girl. the cards and letters I had sent in those early years sharing my small successes, which had received only perfunctory responses. While Carter Investments remained wedded to outdated models and antiquated thinking, I was building the very company you now hope will save you. I continued. The company you relegated to a storage room today. James made a desperate attempt to regain control of the situation. This is some kind of practical joke. Alexandria works for a small investment firm in New York. She is not. She cannot be. The majority shareholder and CEO of one of the fastest-growing investment firms in the country. I finished for him. I specifically kept my connection to Evercrest private because I wanted to see how you would treat me based on who you thought I was, not who I had become. Rachel handed tablets to everyone in the room displaying Evercrest's impressive portfolio and my verified credentials. The evidence was irrefutable. I did not create this situation to humiliate you, I said, softening my tone slightly. I came home hoping for reconciliation, for recognition of my achievements. Instead, I was dismissed, belittled, and literally closeted away. My mother had entered during the commotion, and now stood in the doorway, one hand pressed to her mouth in shock. Alexandria, you built Evercrest, the company everyone has been talking about for weeks. I nodded. The same company that has been considering acquiring Carter Investments, yes. Why didn't you tell us? She asked, genuine hurt in her voice. Would it have mattered? I countered. Would you have treated me differently if you had known? Or would you still have seen me as the daughter who needed to be kept out of important business discussions? My father finally found his voice, though it lacked its usual commanding tone. You deliberately deceived us. I revealed exactly who I have always been. I corrected him. A capable, intelligent investment professional who happens to be your daughter. The deception was in how quickly you forgot that when I walked away from the path you prescribed for me. James was still struggling to process the revelation, his expression, cycling through disbelief, anger, and fear. So this whole meeting was what revenge, a setup to humiliate us in front of our clients. Not revenge, I said firmly. A reality check. Carter Investments is failing, James. Your quarterly returns are down 18%. You have lost 3 major clients in the past 6 months. Your fee structure is outdated. Your investment strategies are stagnant, and your corporate culture is toxic. I know because I have been researching your company as a potential acquisition target. My brother's face crumpled at having our family's financial struggles exposed so publicly. For a moment I glimpsed the insecure boy beneath the arrogant facade, the one who had always known he was promoted beyond his abilities. My father stood slowly, his authority diminished, but his dignity intact. Alexandria, perhaps we should continue this discussion privately. No, I said firmly. I have spent my entire life being told that financial matters are not for me to discuss. That ends today. Everyone in this room deserves to know exactly what kind of company they are investing with. I turned to address the local clients directly. Carter Investments has a proud history and deep community roots that has value. But it also has serious structural problems that need addressing if it is to survive in today's market. An uncomfortable silence fell over the room. My revelation had irrevocably altered the power dynamic. The untouchable family patriarchs had been exposed as fallible, their business judgment called into question by the very daughter they had dismissed. So what happens now? Gerald Miller asked Ever, the practical attorney. Is Evercrest still considering the acquisition? All eyes turned to me, including my father's. Great. For the first time in my life, I saw something new in his gaze, uncertainty. The great Harold Carter was looking to me for answers, for direction. The realization was both satisfying and sobering. That, I said clearly, depends entirely on what happens next. I motioned to Rachel, who opened the conference room door, to admit the rest of my executive team. 5 impeccably dressed professionals entered carrying tablets and portfolios, the elite acquisition team of Evercrest Capital. They positioned themselves around the room with practiced efficiency, transforming the family business meeting into a high-stakes corporate negotiation in a matter of seconds. "Allow me to introduce Marcus Wells, our Chief Financial Officer," I said, indicating a distinguished man in his 50s. "Jessica Liu, Head of Acquisitions. Benjamin Taylor, Legal Counsel. Diana Rodriguez, Client Relations Director. And Thomas Blackwell, our Chief Investment Strategist." The contrast between my polished team and the increasingly disheveled Carter Investments representatives was striking. Where my father and brother appeared shell-shocked and defensive, the Evercrest executives radiated calm confidence. "Let us address the elephant in the room." I began moving to the head of the conference table, and the position my father had occupied minutes before. "Carter Investments needs this deal. Your liquidity ratio has dropped below industry standards. Your client acquisition rate is negative, and your overhead costs are approximately 22% above optimal levels." James made a choked sound of protest, but fell silent when my father raised a hand. The old man's eyes never left my face, studying me, as if seeing me for the first time. "Evercrest Capital is in a position to acquire Carter Investments at significantly below market value," I continued. "Based purely on the numbers my CFO has recommended, offering 65 cents on the dollar with significant restructuring." My father flinched visibly at the low valuation, decades of pride crumbling before my eyes. James looked physically ill. "However," I said, softening my tone slightly, "numbers do not tell the complete story. Carter Investments has deep community connections, a loyal client base among older demographics, and a brand history that would take years to build organically. These intangibles have value to Evercrest as we expand into regional markets." A flicker of hope crossed my father's face. "You still want to proceed with the acquisition?" "I am prepared to discuss terms," I replied carefully. "But those terms have changed based on what I have observed today." I nodded to Jessica, who distributed folders to everyone at the table, including the storage room where I had been relegated earlier. "These are our preliminary offers. You will note 3 potential structures for the acquisition, each with different levels of autonomy for current management." My brother grabbed his folder eagerly, hope replacing his earlier hostility. "So we would maintain leadership positions?" "That depends," I said, meeting his gaze steadily. "On several factors, including your willingness to modernize your investment approaches and improve your corporate culture." I turned to address the remaining clients directly. "As potential Evercrest clients, you deserve to know that we take a different approach to investment management. We prioritize transparency, sustainable returns, and ethical investment strategies. Our fee structure is performance-based. Our portfolio managers are diverse in background and perspective, and our corporate culture rewards innovation rather than tradition for tradition's sake." Several clients nodded approvingly. These were values that resonated with younger investors, especially the demographic Carter Investments had failed to attract. My father cleared his throat. "Alexandria, perhaps we could discuss this privately as family." "We are not here as family," I replied firmly. "We are here as business professionals. Evercrest Capital has fiduciary responsibilities to its shareholders and clients that supersede personal relationships." For a moment, hurt flickered across his face, quickly masked by a return to professionalism. "Of course, forgive the suggestion." That brief glimpse of vulnerability reminded me that beneath the proud exterior was a man watching his life's work hang in the balance. The man who had taught me my first lessons about compound interest and market capitalization, however reluctantly. "However," I added, "I believe Carter Investments has untapped potential that the right leadership could develop. The question is whether that leadership exists within the current structure." I proceeded to deliver what was essentially a master class in modern investment strategy, highlighting the specific weaknesses in Carter Investments' approach and contrasting them with Evercrest's more agile methodologies. My team supported the presentation with detailed analytics and case studies, demonstrating our superior returns across various market conditions. Throughout my presentation, I could not help but remember the countless times my investment ideas had been dismissed at the family dinner table, the patronizing smiles, when I had suggested the very strategies that had ultimately built Evercrest into a powerhouse. Your fixed income portfolio is overexposed to municipal bonds, I noted, bringing up a comparison chart on the main screen. While traditionally safe, they are vulnerable in the current interest rate environment. Evercrest has developed a proprietary risk assessment model that has allowed us to maintain stability while achieving significantly higher yields. Thomas Blackwell, my chief investment strategist, expanded on the technical aspects while I observed the reactions around the room. The remaining clients were clearly impressed, several taking notes eagerly. My father listened with intense concentration, occasionally nodding in reluctant agreement. James alternated between defensive posturing and defeated slumping in his chair. Additionally, I continued your client acquisition strategy, relies too heavily on personal networks and local connections. While valuable, this approach has clear limitations in scale and demographic reach. Diana Rodriguez detailed Evercrest's multi-channel client acquisition approach, which combined digital marketing, strategic partnerships, and targeted outreach to underserved investor communities. The future of investment management lies in personalization, sustainability, and technological integration, I concluded. These are areas where Carter Investments has fallen behind the industry curve. By this point, the power shift in the room was complete. Even my father, the patriarch who had ruled Carter Investments with absolute authority for decades, was deferring to my expertise. The local clients were looking to me, rather than him, for guidance about their financial futures. James made one last desperate attempt to reassert control. This is all very impressive, Alexandria, but our clients value stability and tradition. Not everyone wants flashy new approaches that might be gone tomorrow. Before I could respond, one of the clients, Andrew Peterson, from the local hospital board, spoke up. Actually, we have been concerned about the conservative returns for some time. The hospital endowment needs to grow more aggressively to meet future healthcare demands. Another client nodded in agreement. My family has been with Carter Investments for 20 years, but my children have been urging me to move our accounts to more progressive firms. James's final attempt at undermining me had backfired spectacularly, only confirming the disconnect between Carter Investments and its evolving client needs. Here is my proposal, I said, bringing the focus back to the business at hand. Evercrest Capital will acquire Carter Investments at 80 cents on the dollar, a significant premium over current market valuation. We will maintain the Carter name as a regional division, preserving its legacy and community connections. My father straightened slightly at this concession to his pride. Current clients will have the option to transition to Evercrest's more progressive investment strategies or remain with modified versions of their existing portfolios. No one will be forced to change if they are not comfortable doing so. This drew approving nods from the older clients who valued stability. As for management, I continued, coming to the most delicate point. Harold Carter will be offered a position as Chairman Emeritus, an advisory role that honors his founding contribution, while transitioning executive authority to new leadership. My father's expression remained carefully neutral, though I could see him processing the elegant exit strategy I had crafted for him, one that allowed him to save face while acknowledging the need for change. James Carter will have the opportunity to remain with the firm in a senior client relations role, focusing on maintaining established relationships while learning Evercrest's modernized investment approaches. My brother's relief at not being completely ousted was palpable, though the demotion from heir apparent to essentially a sales position was a significant step down. The transition will be gradual and respectful of Carter Investments' history, but make no mistake, substantial changes will be implemented to ensure future viability and growth. I looked around the room, making eye contact with each person present. These terms are generous given the current financial realities. They represent my respect for what Carter Investments has meant to this community, including my own family. But they are not negotiable on the fundamentals. Evercrest cannot and will not acquire a firm that refuses to evolve. The silence that followed was profound. I had laid out a vision for the future that acknowledged the past without being constrained by it. A path forward that offered salvation for the struggling family business, but on my terms, not theirs. After what seemed like an eternity, my father stood slowly. All eyes turned to him, the patriarch, whose decision would determine the fate of 3 generations of family legacy. "You always were the smartest one," he said quietly, his voice rough with emotion. I was too proud to see it. It was the closest thing to an apology I was likely to get, and in that moment it was enough. "We would like to review the detailed terms," he continued, professional once more. "But in principle, we accept Evercrest's offer." The tension in the room dissolved into relieved conversation. Clients approached my team with questions about the transition, staff members whispered among themselves about what the changes might mean for their positions, and Gerald Miller immediately began discussing legal details with Benjamin Taylor. In the midst of the activity, I found myself face to face with my father, away from the others. "You built something remarkable," he said, gesturing toward my team, "without any help from me." "I did," I agreed simply. "I was wrong," he admitted, the words clearly difficult for him. "About you. About what women can achieve in this business." Coming from Harold Carter, this was a seismic concession. I allowed myself a small smile. Better late than never. The formal acquisition agreement was signed 3 weeks later, in the same conference room where I had been relegated to the storage closet. The space had been transformed quite literally and symbolically, with the storage area converted into an expanded meeting space with equal seating for all participants. The Carter Investments logo now displayed alongside Evercrest Capital's sleek insignia, representing the partnership that would preserve the family legacy while propelling it into the future. After the signing ceremony, champagne was poured and congratulatory handshakes exchanged. The mood was cautiously optimistic, tinged with the bittersweet acknowledgement that an era had ended and a new one had begun. As the crowd dispersed into smaller conversational groups, I found moments to speak privately with each member of my family. My father found me first, approaching with a directness that had always characterized him. His silver hair was freshly trimmed for the occasion, his posture straight and proud despite the circumstances. "The papers are calling this a remarkable turnaround story," he said, referencing the business press coverage of the acquisition, Carter Investments, saved by prodigal daughter. "Is that how you see it?" I asked. "A rescue." He considered the question carefully before answering. "I see it as a correction, a necessary one." He paused, struggling visibly, with words that did not come easily to him. "I should have recognized your talent, Alexandria. I was blinded by traditions and expectations that were outdated long before you challenged them." Coming from Harold Carter, this was tantamount to a full apology. I nodded, accepting it for what it was. "The business would not have survived another year on its current path," I said gently. "The market has evolved too dramatically." "And I failed to evolve with it," he acknowledged. "But you did not. You saw where the industry was heading before most of us recognized the shifts. That kind of foresight. It cannot be taught." He extended his hand formally, businessman to businesswoman. "I look forward to learning from you in my new advisory capacity." I took his hand but then pulled him into a brief hug, bridging the professional and personal divide. "Your experience still has tremendous value, Dad. Evercrest will benefit from it." Next came my mother, who had been watching our exchange from across the room. She approached hesitantly, elegantly dressed, as always, but with a new uncertainty in her bearing. "Alexandria," she began, her voice thick with emotion, "I should have supported you more. When you showed those early aptitudes when you wanted to study finance, I should have been your advocate." "You were raised in a different time, Mom," I said, softening at her genuine remorse. "That is no excuse," she insisted. "I had my own dreams once, my own degree in economics that I never used. I should have fought harder for you to have what I did not." This revelation surprised me. My mother had rarely spoken of her own educational background or career aspirations. "It is not too late, you know. Evercrest has positions for experienced professionals returning to the workforce." Hope flickered across her face. "Do you really think I could contribute after all these years?" "With some updating of skills, absolutely. We have a robust re-entry program specifically designed for women who took career breaks for family." Tears welled in her eyes. "I would like that very much." My sister Abigail approached next, her expression a mixture of admiration and lingering confusion. "You built an entire empire and never told us," she said, half accusation, half awe. "All those years, those holiday calls where you just said things were fine at work. Would you have understood what it meant?" I asked. "Or would it have just created more tension with Dad and James?" She sighed, acknowledging the point. "Probably the latter. Still, I wish I had known my sister was a financial powerhouse. It might have given me the courage to pursue some of my own interests beyond what was expected." "It is never too late to redefine yourself, Abby," I told her. "Look at the company. Look at this family. Everything is changing." "Including me," she said with newfound determination. "I have enrolled in a graphic design course. I always wanted to study art, but it was not practical enough for a Carter." I smiled, genuinely pleased. "The new Carter Investments division will need updated marketing materials. Perhaps you could contribute your talents." Her face lit up at the possibility. "I would love that." James was the last to seek me out, finding me alone on the small balcony overlooking Main Street. He had been the most visibly affected by the acquisition, alternating between resentment and forced cooperation throughout the transition process. "Quite the view from up here," he said, joining me at the railing. "You can see the whole town." "It gives perspective," I agreed neutrally. He was silent for a long moment before speaking again. "I have always been afraid I would fail," he admitted suddenly. "That I was not good enough to run the company, that I would be the one to ruin Dad's legacy. I think that is why I was so defensive when you showed promise. You represented all my insecurities." The unexpected vulnerability caught me off guard. This was a side of James I had never seen one. He had carefully hidden beneath arrogance and bravado. "The truth is," he continued, "I am relieved. Running the company was slowly crushing me. I hated making investment decisions, second-guessed myself constantly. The client relations part, though, that I actually enjoy. Which is why I structured your new role the way I did," I told him. "You have natural charisma, James. People trust you. That is valuable in this business." He looked at me with genuine curiosity. "You did not set me up to fail." "What would that accomplish?" "You are still my brother. The company still bears our family name. I want all of us to succeed, just in the roles best suited to our actual abilities." He nodded, slowly processing this. "I have a lot to learn from you." "And I from you," I replied. "Your community connections run deep. That knowledge is irreplaceable for our regional strategy." We stood in companionable silence for a moment, perhaps the first truly peaceful moment we had shared as adults. Over the following 6 months, Carter Investments underwent its transformation into Evercrest's regional division. The changes were significant, but implemented with respect for the firm's history and existing client relationships. Modern investment strategies were introduced alongside traditional options. The office culture shifted from hierarchical to collaborative. New technology, streamlined operations, and improved client experiences. Most significantly, a mentorship program for young women interested in finance was established, with scholarships to business schools and internship opportunities. I named it after Margaret Wilson, my own mentor, who had first believed in my vision for Evercrest. The family dynamics evolved as well. My father, after initial resistance, found satisfaction in his advisory role, particularly enjoying the freedom from day-to-day management pressures. My mother thrived in her return to professional life, bringing valuable perspective to client relations with older women investors. an often overlooked demographic. Abigail's design work brought fresh energy to the firm's visual identity, while James excelled in maintaining and strengthening community relationships. As for me, the journey of healing was more complex than I had anticipated. The vindication of my success was satisfying, certainly, but the lingering pain of those early rejections did not simply vanish with professional recognition. I found myself working through layers of resentment I had not fully acknowledged even to myself. In the end, it was not the acquisition or the professional triumph that brought me peace. It was the gradual rebuilding of relationships on new foundations of mutual respect. It was watching my mother rediscover her professional identity. It was seeing my sister pursue her creative passions without apology. It was even developing a more honest relationship with my brother, free from the rivalry that had defined us for so long. 6 months after the acquisition, I moved Evercrest's regional headquarters to Mapleton, splitting my time between there and New York. The decision surprised many in the financial world, who questioned why a successful CEO would relocate to a small town. They did not understand that some forms of success cannot be measured in profit margins or market share. The true measure of success, I came to realize, is not proving others wrong about you. It is proving yourself right about yourself. The validation that matters most comes not from external recognition, but from the quiet knowledge that you have remained true to your own vision, even when no one else could see it. My journey from the storage room to the boardroom was never really about revenge or even vindication. It was about claiming the space that had always been rightfully mine, not just in the family business but in my own story. It was about transforming sit in the storage room into I am the CEO, through determination, skill, and unwavering belief in my own worth. If there is one lesson I would share from my experience, it is this: your value is not determined by others' perception of you. The limitations others place on you are reflections of their vision, not your potential. The path to success is rarely straight, often lonely, and almost always requires you to believe in possibilities that others cannot yet see. Have you ever had to prove your worth to people who underestimated you? How did you handle it? I would love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this resonated with you, please like and subscribe to see more content about overcoming obstacles and achieving success on your own terms. And remember, sometimes the person relegated to the storage room today might be running the entire company tomorrow. Thank you for listening to my story, and may you find the courage to claim your own rightful place, whatever that means for you.